Even though my videos are pretty hard lined, even though I'm pretty harsh with my messages, with my messaging, I feel bad for Gen Z. I really do. I feel bad for them because they never had a fighting chance at all. They never had a chance at life. And I'm on the older end of Gen Z, so I guess I kind of fit into that pocket as well. Raised a little bit different from the younger end of Gen Z and the next generation after that. But I feel for them because they came out the womb with every obstacle set against them. And it's so funny because you'll hear boomers and the older generation say, "Oh, your generation is just lazy. You don't want to do anything and you don't want to achieve anything," and so on and so forth, which is partly true. It's not the whole truth, it is partly true. But let me tell you this: Gen Z was born into a generation that continued to push college education, even when college education was moving out the door. Gen Z was born into a technocentric, social media oriented generation and worldview without them being able to formulate their own thinking patterns. See, I'm old enough to remember MySpace, right? I'm old enough to remember MySpace, where you had to literally sneak on a computer, right? Log on just to see what was going on, right? Where you and some buddies from school, right? And this had to be middle school. You and some buddies from school was up late night chatting about some bull crap, chatting about a video game, Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas, or something like that, right? I'm old enough to remember that. I'm old enough to remember a time without an iPhone. I'm old enough to remember a time without Snapchat, a time without Instagram, a time without what's another big one? Any of these other, platforms. I'm old enough to remember a time without that. I had a sidekick, right? I had a sidekick where you actually had to have a chick's number. You actually had to have a girl's number. And you probably honestly wouldn't have about one or two of them in there, one really at most. And that ended up being your girlfriend, right? And I just look back on that time period and I'm just thinking to myself, like, dang, it was so simple. Everything was so simple. You went outside, played, right? Played a little basketball. I remember a time period where families weren't as polarized. I remember a time period where, yeah, you got into a little trouble. Yeah, you smoked a little marijuana, but, it was nothing like the sorts of today. See, now the newer generation, they're growing up in a social media oriented society where everything they're seeing is so extreme. They're seeing sexual extremes. They're seeing political extremes. They're seeing gender extremes. They're seeing financial extremes. Everything that they're seeing online is extreme. We're all seeing it, but by the time I didn't get an Instagram. I didn't make an Instagram profile honestly until I graduated high school. Instagram was around probably about 4 years prior, 3 years prior, maybe, but it was still brand spanking new. People were just uploading pictures. People didn't really use Instagram as they use it today, right? They didn't use it the same way. But now everything is to the extreme, right? I remember logging on Instagram. I remember at one point I didn't even want an Instagram. I didn't care nothing about it. I didn't care for Instagram until I started to become a photographer, right? Once upon a time I was a photographer and I didn't care about Instagram until I wanted to get into photography. Then I had to have an Instagram to show off some of my work. That was it, right? And then even still, you didn't see the stuff that you see today. I can literally log on to my phone right now. Let me pull my phone out. Let's see what's on my explore page. I can literally right now go to my Instagram. Let's see what's on my explore page. Boom. Booty, 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 booty. You can't get away from it, right? This is what's sold now. This is what I mean when I say sexual extremes, right? This is there. Listen, the brains of Gen Z and the younger generations, they're overstimulated with everything, right? They can't get away from it. They can't get away from it. So, like I said, at least the older end of Gen Z going into the younger millennials, at least we were able to gain some kind of grasp on our own individuality, right? On our own thinking patterns, right? At least we were able to grasp it on some level, right? Now you have them, they're coming into middle school. They already know who Andrew Tate is. They're coming into middle school, and you have people like Nick Fuentes, rising to the top of the far right movement, right? They're seeing all of these things, and they're not able to formulate their own opinions. They're not able to formulate their own thought patterns because this is what's thrown at them everywhere. It's thrown at them on Instagram. It's thrown at them on YouTube. I remember a point in time where YouTube wasn't as extreme, right? But now it is. Now it is, believe it or not. Now it is. And they're seeing all of these things. They're growing up. They're growing up knowing who people like Fresh and Fit is. They're growing up knowing who Instagram model or a corn star is, right? They're growing up knowing these things, right? Without even setting foot in the world, right? And then you add on top of they were sold to go to college, get a good degree as well. We were sold that too, right? Even though that failed with millennials. Millennials will tell you that they're still trying to get the American dream. They're still struggling as it is. They're still trying to find a good job as it is. Yes, millennials. The oldest millennials should be in their 40s right now, right? Late 30s. The older millennials are still trying to get the American dream, which they have not attained. The only people who have received the American dream to its entirety is the boomers, and they're still receiving it because they hold the majority of the stock market and the wealth in this country. Gen Z has no chance. And on top of that, we were also sold the whole marriage dream. Marriages were plummeting, relationships were plummeting before our nuts dropped, right? And then I'm not gonna, both men and women are suffering, but I focus more on men. But both men and women were sold lies and were sold dreams and were sold fairy tales. Yes, absolutely. Marriages are plummeting, right? There's a whole gender war that's taken off to the extremes. Men don't even know, young men don't even know how to talk to women. And I don't mean that in like, oh, he talking to her in a disrespectful manner. No, they don't even know how to talk to women. I was talking to this guy, right? Me and this older guy, we were talking about women or whatever. And a young Gen Z guy, he had to be like 18, 19, right? And he asked a very genuine question. He asked, because we were talking about women and the amount of women that blah 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 blah. And he was just like, how do y'all do it? He was like, how do you approach women? Like how do you get their numbers? Like how do you just riz? How do you do it? I just don't, I never got it. I don't understand it. And in my mind, like I wanted to bust out laughing because I'm like, this can't be real, right? This can't be real, right? Like I don't I didn't grow up with dudes not talking to girls, right? Even if you weren't the best with spitting game, like the ugliest duckling out of the group still talk to girls. But this guy, fairly good looking paws, right? Fairly good looking, not fat at all, in young shape. He got the young shape on him. So, it was nothing really wrong with him. And I was just confused. I'm lost. I'm like, bro, just talk to him. Right. But see, here's the thing. Life has become overcomplicated for Gen Z. It has become overcomplicated for people in general, but specifically, Gen Z and younger, because They don't understand the fundamentals of life. They don't understand the financial fundamentals. They don't understand the relationship fundamentals. They don't understand dating fundamentals. They don't understand any fundamentals. All the fundamentals were taken from them. It was snatched from them. The world became complicated before they were able to understand what is going on, and many of them still don't understand what is going on. They're looking at an administration, they're looking at a government who seems to not care about them. They're looking at a society who seems to have cast them aside. And this can get very dangerous when you're talking about young men who have nothing to do, who have no jobs, who have no ambition, who have no willpower, who have no authority over their own lives. This can get dangerous because they're full of testosterone. Well, some of them full of you would think they're full of testosterone. Some of them full of testosterone, many of them not. But they're full of energy, right? They're young, they need something to do, right? They're not focused on the right things. That can get very dangerous. And this is where we get school shootings. This is where we get mass drug use. This is where we get extremism. This is where we get just unnecessary violence and self-deletion rates. This is where all of these things this is when all of those things start to trend upwards, which we've seen the trending upward of self-deletion rates among young men. We've seen the OD rates of young men, right? We've seen the joblessness rates go up amongst young men. We see the homelessness rates go up. How many? They say around 30% of Gen Z, around 30% of Gen Z still lives with their parents, not even out here on their own. So while life is still going on, while Gen Z is still getting older, they're not even experiencing life. They're still not getting out here by themselves. Listen, when I was 17, I was out of there, right? Enlisted into the military, I was gone. I was ready to go, right? Did a semester. I think I did like a semester or two in college, and I was gone to the military, right? Came back home a new man, bought my first car, straight cash, right? I was on my own since 17. I was ready to go. I was ready to be on my own. I was ready to be a man. I was ready to show the world what I was made of. I was ready. But you have guys, and you're talking about 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. You have millennials who are staying at home now too. It's all around. It's an all around shit show. And who's doing something about it? Nobody. Because all they can listen to is the extremes. All they can listen to is who's on the internet. All they can listen to is the gurus. Why? Because the parents are not showing them anything. The parents have failed. The boomers have failed. We live in a system that clearly doesn't benefit us. It clearly benefits those who originally inherited the American dream, who originally could afford a home, who originally had a good 401k, who had the space to put money into a 401k, who originally bought Coca-Cola stock at 25 cents and now they're a multi-millionaire, right? Listen, I'm not by no means making excuses or trying to make everybody a victim, right? But we have to acknowledge facts. We have to acknowledge truths. And the truth is, on a psychological level, Gen Z never grew up. On a psychological level, many of them are still children, like young children, because they were never mentally they were never given the psychological chances to mentally grow up, to emotionally grow up. Their emotions, their psychology, the way that they think, the way that they view the world was clearly curated by algorithms. It was curated by algorithms. And then when those algorithms are constantly changing, think about what that's doing to the human psyche who never gained any kind of authority over their own life, body, mind, spirit, anything. right? Their whole personality. Just pay attention to Gen Z. Many of them, their whole personalities are curated, right? You would think many of them are NPCs, but you would think that they're like just game characters. Their whole personalities, their whole lives is curated by online BS and algorithms. And when those trends die, they're on to the next one. It's literally like the algorithms are controlling Gen Z. And you think they have a fighting chance at life? These are the future stars of our world. The drug users, the financial incapable, the mentally handicapped. And I'm not saying that to be, just a bad mouth them, but I'm just calling it for what it is. They have no agency over anything, but much of it is not even their fault. It's not. And like I said, I'm not trying to draw any excuses for anybody. However, this is what's going on. They have no agency, none whatsoever. But then boomers are wondering why they're angry. Boomers are wondering why they're the most hated. The older generation are wondering why the younger generation don't give a damn about listening to y'all. What have y'all done? What have y'all done but drive this damn country into the mud and take all of its resources, take everything that y'all say that it was promised to us. Y'all extract everything up out of, still extracting, because many of y'all still ain't dead yet. Y'all still extracting all the resources, but then telling us to go to college when university in 1970 for in-state tuition was around $384. I did the research. In-state tuition in most states across America was on average around $300 and $400 for in-state tuition. Check those stats now. The cost of tuition to wages, the gap was not as wide as it is now. My granddad, my grandfather, he was able to be a police officer at night. No, he was able to be a police officer during the day and then pay for school, pay for his whole university while being a police officer because he went to night school in college. He was able to pay that off with his regular salary. That was way back in the day, before I was born. So y'all keep talking about Gen Z don't want to work hard. Many Gen Z do work hard. Many Gen Z that I know, they work 2 or 3 jobs just trying to get by. That's many of the Gen Z I know. Yeah, some are lazy. Some just like, what are y'all doing? Some, doped up. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, it's a mix of them. But just to say that Gen Z don't want to do anything, just to say that Gen Z, oh, back in my day, yeah, back in your day, you wouldn't survive today. Did you? If the boomers had to live through current economic times, they wouldn't survive. They wouldn't survive. With the major technology advances, the only thing that's keeping boomers afloat are their stock portfolios and their real estate. Anything else, they don't know shit about. They don't know what's going on, right? They watch the legacy news. They don't know what's going on. If they had to be Gen Z today, they will not survive. With everything in the mix of what I just said, they wouldn't survive. They wouldn't. But anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. Am I right? Am I wrong? Right? Do I have a point? Do I not? Right? Make sure you subscribe if you're new. Make sure you sign up for the Patreon, the Escape Blueprint. If you are lost in the sauce, you want to figure out what's going on, you want to gain some kind of awareness. I'm going through phase 1 of the Escape Blueprint right now, called awareness, where I'll wake you up, right, and show you what's going on in the world, show you what you need to be doing, show you what you need to be exploring. Because listen, we're moving into the PFP environment. We're moving into the after pill, right? Listen, purpose, freedom, and power is what you need to be focused on. Sign up for the Patreon, right? If you just want to support the channel, if you just want to support the message, become a YouTube member, and I'll see y'all in the next one. And this was an after pill. Peace. I built a life. I built a family. I worked my hands raw to get here, and I'm not done. This is the escape blueprint, PFP life, a way out of the grind